at the same time. Teshuvah meaning repentance, because apparently God already knew that even though he was giving the Torah, we would not follow it, and we would have to have teshuvah and repentance. So those were pre the world's creation. So the first thing is they say maybe it was the angels, but another thought is us, were the animals, talking to the animals. And he's saying that he would make a creature that is animal in some ways, needing to eat, sleep, and mate, and like God in other ways, compassionate, creative, moral, and self-conscious. So that we are a combination of an animal nature and a higher nature, which we know psychologists say that, psychiatrists say that about us. And this is like 1,000 years before, several thousand years. So it says here, in our own image. So what do you think is the image? What in your mind is the image of God? What does that mean? The image of God. This is your opinion. There's no wrong answer. What do you think God said? Let us make God in our own image. You think it's a physical repentance? Just raise your hand and I'll call you. If you have an idea. Susan, hi. Susan Ehrlich. What do you think it means in our own image? Any ideas? Well, was it a physical image that we would look like God? Susan.
Moral qualities.
Moral qualities.
Of God.
Yes, that is one of the things that the commentators say. There's this wonderful story about how if you make a coin and you create a coin and you, like in a mint, every coin looks the same. But when God created humanity, every single person was different. Some people say the image is the divine spark that we have, that piece of God, that soul, that special spiritual higher level. That is the piece of God within us that, you know, literally in the description, God breathed right into the nostrils, breathed right into the being that he created. And the word for breath is neshama, and it's also the word for soul, neshama. It's the same word. So that is the image. It's the inner soul, the breath of God, the spark of God in us. So let me ask you another question. Okay, so he created this being, and it says male and female, he created them. Male and female, one being. So what does that mean? Some of the my Torah students know it. How did the first human look? Does anybody know? Imagine. Well, according to the Midrash, this is what you would have in the study thing. I would ask somebody else to read it, but I have to read it. The first human being was actually a pair of twins attached to one another, one female. It was a double being. And this is also in Plato. He also describes the first being as that. And he divided them and commanded them to reunite, to find the other person that will fulfill you. And we talk about this at weddings, how your beshert, or your other half that you sometimes find, that connection, that is the original split, male and female, or the other half of your soul is connected. So the Midrash says the first human being was a male-female being. Okay, and why do you think, so God created, it seems like he fulfilled the world with a lot of plants, a lot of birds, a lot of animals. It's not like Noah where there was two of each, but when it came to human beings, he just did one male and one female. Why? What would the thinking be? Why do I only have one of each? Any ideas? Because the rabbis asked this question. Jody, what do you think?
Well, I just took a bite of apple, but what I was thinking was maybe God sort of knew human nature from the beginning and didn't want to create like an awkward dynamic with jealousy and competition, that if there's just one man and just one woman and each has a role in the Garden of Eden, then they can be their best selves without generating jealousy and competition, maybe.
That's a good idea.
It's
However,
wrong.
we know that the snake played that role anyway.
True.
Later. But that's a good idea. I like that thought. That's good. Any other idea why there was just one of each at the very beginning? Now, let me just, say we don't believe this is literally true. What we're talking about is our Jewish creation myth. And what does the Jewish creation myth say about Judaism and say about us and the way we believe? Because every culture has its own creation myth. So what we're exploring is the psychology, the thinking, and the philosophy of Judaism through this origin story, this creation myth. So does anybody have any ideas why there was just one of each?
So I was thinking that he created an imperfect being.
An imperfect being.
Or two imperfect beings. So it was experimental in nature and need to have an evolving process with it.
That's very interesting. I like that idea. Yes.
I think it's the two people. I think it's the two because the two can become 3, 4. It's like be fruitful and multiply. So
but why? Yes, he did. But why didn't he created a lot of animals at once, but he only.
Does it have something to do with one God, our belief in one God?
Explain.
That this idea of one person that would move on, and that there wouldn't be a lot of that this one person would evolve.
That's interesting.
In the best way they
about
could.
the idea that if it was just one man and one woman, then everybody is related. Although people today, we have a lot of we have anti-immigrant, we have anti-race and so forth. But really, if it started with one man and one woman, we are all related.
Yes.
It's also in the beginning, there was a choice, though. I mean, does choice play into this?
Well, the rabbis said, because, when these stories were written, there was a huge hierarchy. There were the kings, then there were the nobles, and then there were the middle class, and then there were the slaves, and nobody could ever get out of their strata, out of their demographic base. But this story tells us that we all came from the same two people. We all came from the same source, so nobody is better than another. There's no royal bloodline. There's no hierarchy. We all are stemmed from the same two people. And they did find genetically there is one woman in Africa who has this mitochondrial DNA that apparently most humans are descended from. Everybody has a piece of her original DNA, apparently. So it's kind of the same thing, that we all are equal because we all come from the same source. Spiritual source from God, but actual physical source in this story from the first man and the first woman. So that was the first story. And at the end of this chapter, which I didn't put on the sheet, but God looks at the sixth day and looks at man and woman, and he says, every day he said, and he saw it was good. On this day, it's very good. Humans were supposed to be the crown of God's creation, the crown, the most beautiful, the most important. And he said, you will rule. I'm giving you all of this world, this garden for you. Also, by the way, just as an aside, it's very clear that humans were not supposed to be eating animals and that they were supposed to be vegetarians. Nowhere in the world does it say you're supposed to be eating them. You're supposed to be taking care of them. So this is a big plus for that. But then when we go to chapter 2, there's another creation story about woman and man again. But man exists, but there's no woman. And then God says something in chapter 2, verse 18 of Genesis. It is not good for man to be alone. Man, okay, now let's just back up. The word is not man, it's Adam. Adam comes from the word Adamah, which means earth. It's an earth being, an earth creature, because God made him from the earth originally. So it's not good for a human to be alone. I will make a fitting helper for him. So here's our first idea of a relationship. What is a relationship going to be? First of all, this is the first time in the Torah God says something is not good. Everything is good, good, very good. It's not good. Human loneliness, isolation, which is our lesson for today. Right now, we're going through. It is not healthy to be alone. And that's why this is so fantastic that we're meeting like this, but that we need to reach out to people, call them, because they've proven that loneliness is as harmful to your health as diabetes or heart disease or high blood pressure. So right now, you know, it is not good for us to be alone. And I will make a fitting helper for him. What do you think a fitting helper would look like?
In verse 18 of Genesis.
Yes. In chapter 2.
Man, okay, let's just back up. The word is not man, it's Adam. Adam comes from the word Adamah, which means earth.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
An earth creature, because God made him from the earth.
Yes, I just said that. So
it's not
it's
good
not good for the human, Is this unstable?
We could fit a helper for him. So here's our first idea of a relationship. What is a relationship?
You.
This is me coming. Why am I repeating?
This
Right.
is the
God is making you say it again.
All right. Okay.
Good one, Karen.
not good. Human loneliness, isolation.
Why is this happening? Don, are you there?
Because there's a recording element to it.
So somebody logged onto Facebook or another source maybe, and it's playing in the background.
Like this, but that we need
You
to
know, I have on my screen here up on the upper left hand corner, it says live on YouTube.
Yeah.
Recording.
There's a delay and it's repeating.
Yes, I have that too.
I'm turning it off.
Can you turn it?
Okay. Did that work?
Yes.
a fitting helper for him. What do you think a fitting
Oh
helper
my God, this is terrible.
verse 18?
Don, are you there?
In chapter 2.
Oh my God.
Are you saying Don or God?
No, Don, he's our